Sonic had everything it took to be one of the biggest names of the kart racing genre. Yet for 3 decades, his racing games never took off in popularity. Casual gamers spent 30 years seeing Sonic's racing games as just a bland ripoff of Mario Kart. Of course, hardcore fans know that's not true. All of these games have their own great qualities. Well, most of them. But there are various specific reasons why each one of these series, like Drift, Riders, All-Stars, unfortunately met their end. Many small things that if Sega had done just a bit differently would have allowed Sonic to catch up with Mario a long time ago. Not in sales, but in acclaim, because when Sonic's racing games were good, they were truly incredible. They just weren't consistent. But now, Crossworlds arrived, and it changed everything. Not only is it possibly the best Sonic racing game so far, but it's actually getting mainstream recognition. The same casual players that used to call Sonic a ripoff are now saying Crossworlds is more fun than Mario Kart World. So why did Sonic's racing games spend 30 years missing the mark, and why is it now suddenly rivaling Mario Kart? I'm Mr. Fascinating, and let's explain everything, one era at a time. First, we have to go back to 1994, when Sega made their first critical error. While Super Mario Kart was defining the genre on Super Nintendo, Sega released Sonic Drift 1 and 2 exclusively for the Game Gear handheld. Think about that. Mario Kart was selling millions on home consoles, and Sega decided to compete with a tiny screen game. Of course, Sonic Drift is a very inoffensive and charming game, but you can't help but wonder about the missed potential. How big could it have been if it was released for the Genesis? This was the moment that set the tone for 30 years of baffling decisions. The Game Gear had a minuscule install base compared to the Genesis, which was actually overtaking Nintendo in the West. Sonic Drift could have been the Genesis answer to Super Mario Kart, but instead, it became a footnote on a dying handheld. Sega had the perfect window to establish Sonic as a racing icon ever since the 90s, and they threw it away for a Game Gear exclusive that sold poorly. This decision haunted the franchise because it established a pattern. Every time Sonic Racing had potential, Sega would find a way to sabotage it with the wrong platform, timing, or execution. Even when the game itself was promising, factors outside of the developer's control would appear. For example, Sonic R came around in 1997. Sonic R had everything going for it conceptually. Characters running on foot instead of carts, which made sense for Sonic. Even if in my opinion the cars are still cool. Gorgeous visuals for the time, catchy soundtrack that people still remember today. But none of that mattered because nobody owned a Saturn outside of Japan. The Saturn was a walking corpse in the West, selling terribly against PlayStation and Nintendo 64. The timing couldn't have been worse. 1997 was the year Mario Kart 64 dominated living rooms worldwide, while Sonic R gathered dust on store shelves. And the game was actually good. Not perfect, but it had the foundation for something special. Yet it was doomed from the start by platform exclusivity that guaranteed failure. The Saturn's early death meant Sonic R became a cult classic instead of a genre-defining hit. Another wasted opportunity in a franchise full of them. Then came 2006, and suddenly everything changed. Sonic Riders launched with a vision that could have revolutionized kart racing forever. Forget everything you know about traditional racing games. This was Sonic Team at their most creative, building something completely different. The hoverboard concept was brilliant. Air management added strategic depth that Mario Kart never had. The trick system rewarded skill and style. The characters felt distinct with meaningful differences between speed, flight, and power types. Most importantly, it felt fast in ways that other racing games couldn't match. Sonic Riders had problems, sure. The learning curve was steep. The air system confused casual players, so you had to be patient and stick with the game for a while until the gameplay finally clicked. But underneath those issues was a racing game with genuine innovation and personality that made Mario Kart look bland by comparison. The sequel, Zero Gravity, simplified mechanics but still retained the core appeal. The aesthetic was incredible. The music was fantastic. Sega was building something special, a genuine alternative to Mario Kart that offered experiences you couldn't get anywhere else. Then came Free Riders in 2010, and everything fell apart. It took everything that made Sonic Riders special and threw it in the garbage. It replaced precise controls with flailing motion gestures that barely worked. It turned strategic air management into random flailing. It transformed skill-based racing into pure luck and frustration. The Kinect couldn't handle the precise inputs the game demanded. Players were exhausted after races, not from intense competition, but from physically fighting broken controls, creating a nightmare experience that made players hate the franchise. The worst part was the timing. 2010 was when motion controls were already becoming outdated, yet Sega bet their best spin-off series on a gimmick that nobody wanted. They had built goodwill with 2 solid Riders games, and Free Riders destroyed it completely. The series was so damaged that Sega abandoned the Riders name entirely. This was the first moment a Sonic series racing died, not because of being released on the wrong console, but from a deeply disappointing game. And it would happen again. During the early 2010s, Sega tried a different approach. Instead of making another Sonic-only racer, they went broader with Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. It was a genius decision because it would celebrate Sega's entire catalog of beloved characters. The first All-Stars game was solid, not revolutionary, but pretty good. The kart racing was traditional, but well executed. The character roster was fantastic. Tracks celebrating everything from Super Monkey Ball to House of the Dead gave the game personality. Then came 2012's All-Stars Racing Transformed, and suddenly Sega had done the impossible. They created a kart racer that wasn't just competing with Mario Kart. It was legitimately just as good, if not better, in several key areas. Transformed was a masterpiece of racing game design. The land, sea, and air transformation gimmick could have felt forced, but instead it created dynamic tracks that stayed exciting lap after lap. The gameplay managed to strike that ideal balance between luck and skill that Mario Kart sometimes missed. Most importantly, Transformed felt inspired. You could sense the developer's passion in every track. This was a love letter to Sega's history wrapped in incredible racing mechanics. Sega had finally got it right. This wasn't an uninspired, bland game. It was a potential Mario Kart rival. So naturally, they made the follow-up to it be an uninspired, bland game. 7 years later, Team Sonic Racing was released, and immediately you knew something was wrong. Gone were the beloved characters from other franchises. Gone was the transformation mechanic that made Transform special. Instead, we got a watered-down, generic kart racer that felt like it was designed by committee. The team mechanic was supposed to be innovative, but it mostly just felt like busy work. Staying close for drafting or sharing items, none of it added the strategic depth that Sega promised. Even worse, the game reused most of its tracks from previous All-Stars games. How do you go from the creativity of Transform to this? It was embarrassing. It's not a problem to reuse previous tracks, but there were very few truly new tracks in comparison. The character roster was also tiny compared to what came before. It felt as if Team Sonic Racing was the same game as Transformed, but smaller and worse in every way. It wasn't broken like Free Riders. It was just forgettable. Within days of release, streamers moved on to other games. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled completely overshadowed it. This was heartbreaking because it showed Sega had learned nothing from Transform's success. They had the blueprint for racing game excellence, made fans wait for 7 years, and they threw it away for generic mediocrity that pleased nobody. Then something unexpected happened. Sega announced Sonic Racing Crossworlds, with trailers that made people actually curious about Sonic Racing again. A free open beta was released, and suddenly everyone was talking about how this might be the best Sonic spin-off ever. The funniest part is that it was at the perfect moment. Mario Kart World stumbled hard with controversies around pricing, not to mention the update that forced boring intermission courses on multiplayer. This made many players quit the game, which is now having error messages due to empty lobbies. Fans started looking for alternatives and decided to randomly check out the free Sonic beta that was available. Then they found out Sonic's racing games weren't just bland ripoffs, as Crossworlds delivered exactly what they wanted. What makes Crossworlds win is that it commits fully to what kart racing should be. No empty open world, no annoying intermission tracks. The speed is intoxicating. The rival system is insanely funny. The gadgets make build customization incredibly deep. Crossover characters like Joker and Hatsune Miku went viral, restoring that All-Stars Racing crossover magic that fans begged for. The open beta numbers tell the story. 18,000 concurrent players on Steam alone. Twitch streams pulling massive viewership. Gaming influencers and media outlets calling it more fun than Mario Kart World. For the first time ever, Sonic Racing isn't seen anymore as just a simple knockoff. Now every mainstream casual player knows that it can be just as good. And if Sega continues delivering, this might be remembered as the moment the Sonic Racing series was saved. Click the video that is appearing on screen right now before it disappears to understand the 3 harsh lessons that Nintendo needs to learn from the success of Sonic Crossworlds.